Hello friends, thank you very much for joining me on this session which is about Agile.NET development. My name is Vidyavrat Agarwal and I am a Microsoft MVP, TOGAF certified architect and certified Scrum Master. This session is being delivered on behalf of C# Corner Redmond chapter. Redmond is a city in Seattle where Microsoft is. Now these are my social coordinates. I tweet at .NET Author. My blog is My Passion for .NET, and you can also see the Facebook page for that. So let's quickly discuss the agenda for this session today. Here are some of the bullet points I have placed. I will be taking all the questions and answers at the end of the session. However, if you have to ask something really urgent or you think it's the right time to discuss, please feel free to unmute yourself and raise your question, or I will answer those either at the same time or maybe later. So let's begin with it. Now this is a little bit about me, and there are quite a bit my certifications and my qualifications, but what qualifies me to deliver this session is that I am also a certified Scrum Master, and I have done Agile Scrum in many software development teams while I'm also writing code and architecting solutions. Below are some of my awards or my status with C# Corner and Microsoft, as you can see. So moving on, let's understand the life cycle of a developer. Because I'm also a .NET developer, I still like to write code as and when time permits. So if you see the life cycle of a developer, what happens? We start at something, and that something is user requirements. So there would be a business analyst. They will grab user requirements and user explains them that what user want. So this is here what the user needed. Now this is what user described and analyst understood. Now this is the result of the design. So when we design, we get something like that. Now, what could have been sufficient? Because if you know, in Agile, there is also a principle that you are not gonna need it. We call it YAGNI, Y-A-G-N-I, which means you are not gonna need it. Which means that do not over-engineer. That's what another principle of Agile methodology is. And this is the result of the implementation. So as you can see, there's a little bit spillover of the content of that cup. The spillover means that at implementation, your application fails, there are bugs, there are issues, or some gap in the implemented functionality. Now, all these things result into a greater outcome, which is happy customer, manager, and management. But this is not the reality. At the end, what you see is that everybody says, oh, it's the fault of the developer, right? Because developers are the one who are implementing the entire application or solution or product. So what are the issues around it? So Agile methodology is a way to overcome from all such issues and deliver more value and better products. So let's see what happens. Now, every developer, every team wants to deliver value. Now, team has some barriers in order to deliver value. And those barriers in Agile methodology are known as impediments. Now, according to English terminology, impediment is a hindrance or obstruction in doing something, which prevents you from achieving something. That is impediment. It could be anything. It could be that you do not have clear requirements. It could be that you are blocked because other developer did not deliver his task. It could be your laptop is not functioning. It could be TFS is down. It could be anything. But in general, here we are talking about dependencies like user requirements are not clear. There are some scope creep, there are architecture misplace, or all such technical things are considered as impediments in agile methodology. Now, being a .NET developer, what I learned that there is a huge dependency between various roles in a team. So for example, user and stakeholders are relying or depending on developers. Developers are relying or depending upon testing. Testing is relying or depending upon operations, and vice versa. Now what are these? These all are different type of dependencies for things, tasks, expectations, deliverables which team have among themselves. Now, which means that I am a dev, but I did not get clear requirement from user or stakeholder. Tester says that I do not have item delivered or task delivered or feature completed from the development. And then operations says that we don't have the entire assemblies or components we need or modules or files which we want to deploy. Now, all these things go hand in hand, and these things causes the greater issue when it comes for value delivery. Now, when all these issues happen, what happens that time is you have increased cycle times. Increased cycle times means you wanted to deliver something in 4 weeks. Now this can cause to deliver it in 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. Since you are putting more man hours to get things done, your budget is going to shrink. Your budget has been eaten up, which means increased cost. What you planned, what you estimated is not real. You are going to consume or eat more budget. Now, dissatisfied users and stakeholders. You committed that you will deliver this feature in 4 weeks, but it turned out that you are going to deliver it in 6 weeks. Moving on, you lost value opportunities. Opportunities are more projects, more requirements, more feature development tasks given to the team. It's as good as you are working for a client, that client is not happy, you lose the client, which means that it's an opportunity. Now, Agile adoption. Agile has various ways to deliver products or deliver applications. Scrum is the most used methodology of Agile in industry. There are many more, but Agile Scrum is the well-known and well-worked, time-tested methodology in industry today. Now, Scrum is something like what you are seeing in the picture. This term came from rugby. Rugby is a game, and in that, entire team work together to get the possession of the ball. So rugby is kind of a football in which entire team works together to get the possession of the ball. So it's the whole team which moves together, which works together, and then they try to accomplish the target. Same thing happens in Agile. Without team, you cannot do anything. It's the team work. Now, before we move any further, let's understand two approaches of industry. One is plan-driven and second is value-driven. If you look on the left, the staircase thing, like requirement analysis, design, coding, testing, all these things are nothing more than a waterfall approach. In waterfall, what happens once one particular thing is not complete for a larger number of days for any phase, let's say coding, until that entire 3 months, 2 months, all that time is not complete, you cannot begin testing. That is waterfall model. That was a plan-driven. So you have a plan that we will accomplish coding first, which is development task, and then we will give it to testing. So testing cannot begin until development has finished. However, in a value-driven approach, it's iterative. You start at requirement gathering, you design, you develop, you test, you deploy, and then you retrospect. Now, retrospect is something you may or may not understand, which I will talk about it later. So what you do, you take shorter sprints, you take shorter cycles to deliver work. And in that short cycle, you perform all the tasks which SDLC has in a shorter span, and then you deliver value. So this is what plan-driven versus value-driven. On left is waterfall, on right-hand side is agile or iterative. Now, this is Agile Manifesto. Now, in this, the key area is this one right here. The larger text you see in the center of the screen. So what it says that individuals and interactions over processes and tools, which means individual commitment, individuals' interaction between the team members is more important than process and tools you establish. I have worked in both the settings, in Waterfall for long, and I have been working in Agile Scrum for many years now, so I can compare very well between two. And I'm sure many of you will do that if you are already doing Agile correctly, or if you are looking forward to do it. This is the key area. Now, working software over comprehensive documentation. Another beauty of Agile is that there are no documentation. There is no BRD, business requirement document, FRD, functional requirement document, SRS, system requirement specification. All these names are for the same document. Now, there is no such document which exists. There are no artifacts like no architecture plan, no detailed design document, no deliverable regarding documentation. That is what Agile says. Now, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Now, in normal waterfall approach, what happens when something goes wrong with your application or you discover more requirements? What happens? Team talks about discussing the budget, re-estimating, finding scope creeps. In Agile methodology, there is no such thing. In every single task, in every single requirement, user collaborate equally, just like team. And user is your end customer. Now, responding to change over following a plan. Now, in waterfall, you cannot change your plan very often. But in Agile Scrum, you can change the plan. You can modify your needs as per your requirement. And I will discuss a little bit more about it, but this is available. If you will search Agile Manifesto, you can read it. You can read a little bit more about it on my blog, mypassionfor.net as well. Now, this is the most important thing. So this screen talks about Scrum's end-to-end process. So we are doing Agile. Agile means moving quickly, moving fast. That is what Agile means. Now, in any Agile Scrum team, there are few roles. And those roles are, there are three roles basically. One is product owner. Second is team. And third is Scrum Master. Now, all the requirements which you have are documented after interviewing different stakeholders, business users into a backlog. So what you see on the left here, right here, product owner creates backlog. We call that product backlog. Product backlog is nothing more than where all your requirements are documented in the form of user stories. So user story is the unit of a feature, of a task, or any work you are going to deliver. Then entire team sits together and they do planning. Planning means we call it sprint planning. In sprint planning, entire team sits together and they look at the backlog. And product owner and team decides which tasks they want to deliver in a particular sprint. Let's say I have 20 requirements or 20 features to be developed, and we pick 10 features. Those 10 features are the one which we are going to deliver in our sprint. In Scrum, in Agile Scrum, a sprint can run from 1 week to 4 weeks. That's the duration of the single sprint. I have worked in 2 sprint settings. One is 2 week, one is 3 week. I recommend 2 weeks because in 2 weeks you can deliver more. By delivering more, I didn't mean that you need to burn yourself. You work more than 8 hours in a day. By deliver more means that you get more value and you get to know more about the product and you get to see early feedback. And in a month you have 2 sprints. It goes like that. Now in those 10 days, whatever you are doing will be watched by the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is a person who helps entire team deliver work, deliver value, help you remove impediments, discuss issues with product owners and teams and what's or not. So it's like a project manager kind of role, but in Scrum there is no manager. There is only team. So Scrum Master will be the person who will remove the impediments. Now, sprint is the term we are using here, and Agile uses sprint. What does sprint mean? So if you see on top right corner here, this is the definition from English Dictionary. Sprint means sprint is to run at full speed over a short distance. That is what we call a sprint. Now, when you are into a sprint, after sprint planning, your team will start working on it, and from day one there will be a daily stand-up meeting. We call that the stand-up, the status update. In which team will give you the status, that what they are doing, what they are working. I will talk more about it later. Then once all the work is done, let's say 2 weeks, after 10 days, all work is done, then your work will be reviewed. We call that sprint review. And then at the end, before you start new sprint or you take more work from the backlog, there is a retrospective. Retrospective is like a postmortem in which entire team sits together and they discuss what they did right, what they did wrong, and what can be improvised. So these 3 areas are discussed in the retrospective. So Agile Scrum has some ceremonies. Those ceremonies are sprint planning, daily stand-up, sprint review, sprint demo, and sprint retrospective. Now, Agile, whatever you do in Agile, it needs to be estimated. Agile estimation is not very complicated. There are 2 ways to do it, and sometimes people call it planning poker as well. My company do story points. Some companies do t-shirt sizing. So if it is story points, user story could be 0 point, half point, and all like that. If your user story is going beyond 13 points, if so large to do, then it is recommended to divide it into multiple small user stories, because in 10 days you cannot deliver that big feature or task. Now one more thing I want to bring forward, if your company or your team is doing this type of estimation, now this estimation, it has a trick in it. The trick is, let's say I see a user story and I give it 3 points. 3 points are not related to how long I am going to take to deliver that work. 3 points are based on how complicated it is. So basically it's all about complexity, not about the time it will take. So that is something you need to understand. So there could be a user story which can take 10 whole days, but story points are still 3. That doesn't matter. Now, daily stand-up is the thing where you give your status every day. Now, there are various ways to do it. I have worked in teams where we create a board like that. And there you write the user story number. Then you decide whether it is ready for development or not. You do the analysis and design. You define test cases. By here I mean unit and integration tests which developers are going to write. Then you will code and get it reviewed. You will test. And you will see if it is ready for demo. And after it's demoed to the product owner, you will see if it is accepted. Are there any bugs on any user stories? Are you blocked? So different teams follow different type of whiteboarding or status board or reporting mechanism. But this is what I have used in most of the team settings. So you can do your own way. It's agile means you can do whatever you want, but within the following rules of Agile Scrum. Now, once you are into the system, like many teams are working on TFS, I have worked on 2 type of systems or tools. One is TFS, one is Rally. In Rally, it's the same thing, and TFS is also same thing. But it depends which one are you more comfortable with. So now, in this case, what happens that you have 2 things. One is this is the TFS. Now, as you can see, here is sprint dates. Now, sprint dates are like when do you start your sprint and when do you finish your sprint. Now, what happens here, this is just a screenshot of TFS inside. Now, let me move on and let me show you the next screen. Now, this is how a product backlog will look like. Product backlog is that what do you see in the requirements from the user. A product backlog is just like your requirement document where all the requirements are written, and from the product backlog you take items into your sprint backlog. So your product backlog is something which is under the control of product owner, who is communicating very often with end users, stakeholders, business users, and from that product backlog, which is a larger bucket of user requirements, you take user stories or tasks and features out and you move those into your sprint backlog. So there are 2 backlogs, one is product backlog and one is sprint backlog. Now this is something that how list will be shown. Now, when you move an item from a backlog to a sprint, what you see is that you have limited number of items in your sprint which you are committing to deliver within the defined time range. Now, this is how your sprint backlog will look like. As you can see under number 16, there are few items like 19, 20, 21. 19 is a task that you will write code for login. Task number 20 is that you will test the login code, and 21 is you will design the approach for login code. So these are your tasks. Status is to do. To do means that you will do it, and you see that who it is assigned to. And these screens are taken from TFS online or TFS if you are using on-premise. Now this is the workflow for that when you have tasks created, you can move your status, that whether it is to do, it is in progress, is it done, then you can move your tasks from one place to other place. And TFS and Rally both supports drag and drop functionality. So what you can do is from product backlog you can move items from product backlog to a sprint backlog and so on. So from product backlog I am moving an item to a sprint, and then it appears in the sprint. Now let me show you the demo real quick that how it's work. So this is my TFS online thing, and here, as you can see, this is my product backlog, and in sprint I have nothing. So my sprint doesn't have anything, but my backlog has 2 items. Now let's say I am the product owner. Let's do all the role plays now, okay? So I will take you step by step of entire Agile Scrum thing one more time. Now let's say I am product owner, and I have entire list of user requirements which I have documented in my backlog. Now usually what happens, product owner fills the gap into the product backlog in each user story what he wants exactly. And there are teams, there are people who will give you the screenshots either on a paper, or they will use some tools to create a UI. There are various tools which are available in market to design the UI workflow. They will attach it to the user story, some documentation, use case scenarios, UML diagrams, and what's not. And it all still happens in Agile Scrum. Even people say that there are no artifacts. Even my team does that. I have done that all the time. So the only thing is that you do it in 10 days, and everything has to be crystal clear. So let's say I am the product owner, and I decide that I want this item to be done in sprint 1. And I want this item also to be done in sprint 1. And now if I go to sprint 1, I see these 2 items added to my sprint, which we are going to work now from Monday through the following week. That is 2-week sprint. Now, the moment you get it in your sprint, the Scrum Master kicks off the sprint planning meeting. Sprint planning is day 0. So on day 0, now let's say you all people and we all are doing sprint planning. So I double click on this item first. And as a team, we will do the sprint planning. Now when you do sprint planning, you read this user story. User story says add authentication and authorization to the application. Now application means you have to have some sort of basic knowledge that what does authentication mean, what does authorization means, what application we are talking about. This is your common sense. You learn all these things when you work in a team. Now it says, as a user, I want to log in using my corp credentials. Corp means corporate credentials, and access the system resources and site features as per my allocated roles. So for example, I have my credentials given from the employer or from my website, and as per my roles, if I am a user role, supervisor role, admin role, or whatever role you are in, I should be able to access all the features of the product or website as per my roles. Now, the beauty of Agile Scrum is that whatever you are doing, you are involving stakeholders into that. You are taking a buy-in of their input from day 1. Now what product owner wants, what business users want you to deliver is that user is able to log in successfully. I am talking about the acceptance criteria on the right hand side corner. User is able to log in successfully. Proper error messages are shown in case of login failures, and proper logging needs to be taken care of and stored, which means user should be able to log in. If there are any errors like your invalid credentials, or you are not registered user, or at runtime any issues happen, or somebody tried to log in so many times into the system, you need to capture all these instances in the form of logging. And I'm sure every team, every company does these things. So these are very basic acceptance criteria. Now, let's say tomorrow your product owner comes when you deliver this task. we need to discuss a little bit more about this, but let's say tomorrow when you deliver this after 10 working days, your user says, oh, during sprint demo, when you are showing the work to them, demonstrating it during a sprint demo, or we call that a sprint review, your user says, oh my God, why you didn't implement that? User should be shown or prompted 3 times if they enter incorrect password. No, this is not acceptable because this is not in the acceptance criteria. And you do not lose any point. You do not get any bad repo. You do not lose anything because your user did not give you that requirement. Unless you want to deliver extra, you had time in hand and you sensed it by your common sense and you implemented it on your own. But otherwise, nobody can point a finger on you that why you did not do it, because it was not in acceptance criteria. So right now, we are role playing that we are in a sprint review. So you are a team. Let's say I'm the Scrum Master and I ask, okay team, this is the user story. Do you think it's ready for development? Ready for development means that as a dev, no matter I do SQL BI, no matter I do MVC, WCF, you can do anything. You can be any dev. But when you read it as a technical person, do you think you have sufficient information to go and deliver it, develop it? Now, to us, it may look, yes, it could be, but what questions would you like to ask? Like, there would be some questions which you may want to ask to the whole team. Now, in this case, the questions are, okay, when you say that I want to log in using my core credentials and access the system, resources, and site, I need to implement the authentication and authorization. But I am not sure if we are going to use ADFS, LDAP, or we have SQL Server, our own proprietary SQL Server database where we are storing username and password. What mechanism are we going to use? Like in one of the team where I worked, we moved a SQL Server data store for storing username passwords to ADFS. Now, these sort of things you need to ask. Let's say you think that, oh, you know what, it's already known. We know that. If it is known, then you need to write it, because everything has to be documented in TFS. It's as good as you are beefing up or filling all the gaps in your system requirement document or functional requirement specification doc. So you fill all those things in your user story. So here, let's say I am the Scrum Master, and sometimes in sprint planning, product owners are also there. So here I will write like so you will say that a team will implement ADFS to achieve the functionality. Now, let's say somebody will ask now, okay, how about anonymous users? How about, are we going to add any extra roles than what we already have? Because you have been working in the team setting for long, you know all the roles. Like there are 3 roles, one is user, one is supervisor, one is administrator. Are there any more roles they want you to take care of? Then you can ask such questions. So during this role play, I'm trying to give you like how we do it in real world. Then you will ask that question. And always remember, my friends, there is no silly question. And always silly questions get the most points, as long as it has a valid scenario. So you will ask product owner, okay, since you created this item, do you envision more roles to evolve? Are there more user roles evolving? And they will say, oh, that's a good question. Let's not do anything like that. Let's stay with the current roles. So, and you will say, many times I do that, that in my team to my Scrum Master, I tell them that, can we please document that? Because that is what the requirement is. So here they will say, no new user role needs to be implemented, which means No new roles are into the picture, only whatever you see in the current. Now, many times what happens that, let's say, somebody said, and here during sprint planning, to be very honest with you, I will also tell you another trick. People even ask or discuss design questions. Design questions go like this. So let's say you have worked on that, but during sprint planning, team doesn't decide who will do this user story. The focus is only on discussing as much as requirement clear to you. And as I said earlier, it doesn't matter. You are a SQL BI developer, you are a WCF developer, or MVC developer. You can contribute to every single user story and you participate in estimation. So here somebody will say, oh, you know what? Last time I saw that the SQL Server connection string was hard coded in the code in the C# files. Why don't we move those to web config? So all such things can be discussed here. So your PO and Scrum Master can update it that if any configurations are needed, then move those to app.config/web.config, which means whatever you are doing. If you are using app config in your app, or you are using web.config. So I will documented this also now, right? Now somebody will say that there are so many test case scenarios, and it looks like if we are going to do ADFS, where we have no hands-on experience within the team, we don't think we can cover so much negative testing. And there are two types of testing. One is happy path and another one is sad path. Happy path means all the positive tests, like which are to the point, like you can log in, you cannot log in, you have successfully logged in, you have successfully logged out. All these are happy path, straight, way to accomplish functionality and test it. A sad path is like all the out of the ways tests. Now in this case, what happens that you will say only happy path tests can be achieved first, which means that focus on your happy path tests first. Now this is how we do it. Let's say I save it. Now we ask team again, okay team, do you think it's ready for development? Is this information enough for you? And now we will go for the estimation. Now different teams has different ways to estimate. If your team is doing a high level estimation, means how many hours it will take, then you can enter those hours here in the effort. If you are doing story points, then you can enter story points here, whether it is 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, whatever points you think are appropriate. So this way you will do that, and then you can assign it to the person who is in your entire TFS list. So this way you will do it, and I hope you understand how this sprint planning works. Now once you are here and you have all these things done, and it is assigned to me, for example. So let's say it's assigned to me. I save it. Now once it's assigned to you, you can add tasks to it, because how would you record your time? What did you do, right? So what you do, you go to this thing and you add childs. So it's a child, and what it is, it's a task, and the task title is analysis and design. So it could be something like understanding requirements more and planning how much it is going to take, and whether are you blocked or not. In activity, you say you are in the design phase and how much work is remaining. So if you remember earlier, there was a effort column. In effort, let's say I put 40 hours, then I will say here that remaining work is now 38, which means I have spent 2 hours in analysis and design, like that. And slowly you go from 40 to 0 hours remaining, and this way you can add tasks. Now what happens here, when you do all these things like that, and you are in TFS, you can see your own tasks. So if you see here, this is my analysis and design, and I'm thinking it is going to take me 38 hours. So by 38 hours, I meant here that how much time is remaining. So to make it more appropriate, I put it 2 hours. So it says that I will take 2 hours to do analysis and design. And once I create it, I move it to in progress. In progress means that I am working on it. Now, so today, in my status reporting, I can say that I'm working on analysis and design, and I'm also reviewing the code in the current system. I'm also working on the approach, how I'm going to implement it, learning a little bit about ADFS, and tomorrow I will start coding. So this is my status update. Status update cannot be so long, so detailed. Status update has only 3 things to do: what I did yesterday, what I am going to do today, and am I blocked? Only 3 things you talk about. If there are further discussions needed, you have to talk too much about something, then you discuss that when entire stand-up is over. We call that post-scrum. Post-scrum means after scrum stand-up or status update is over, then you discuss those things, and we call that post-scrum. When you are done with this whole item, you move that to done, and this way your Scrum Master can track your progress within the system, then how you are moving towards that. Now this is a little bit about that how do you work with the board. It's not so complicated approach, and this way you create your sprint, and again while you are working on your sprint, your product owner will be working with the stakeholders. He will be adding more work items into the product backlog. You as a team with a sprint Scrum Master will move those items into another sprint here, and then again you will roll over from after 2 weeks. You will start another sprint, and then you will do it. Let's say, so we did sprint planning, we did daily stand-up. Let's say now it's done. When it is done, it's time for a sprint review. A sprint review means this functionality will be demonstrated to the product owner and some end users. So you will show it to them so they accept the functionality. Accept is means accepted. So if you see, so here is it's done. Now that means that you have completed it, and reason is work finished. So you in TFS you can add more columns as per your need within the team, and the people who are more familiar with this TFS, they might be seeing different screen in your team settings because you can add and modify it. Now when your story is accepted, you are done. You hand it over to the product owner, but before you deliver it, you need to get it tested and verified and code reviewed and everything you do in the middle. And that comes when you are in the process. When you are in progress, which means it is being developed, code reviewed, unit tests written, tested by the test team, and then you demonstrate it. Now once it's over, you are all done. Let's say team delivered all the items within those 10 days, 2 weeks sprint. Now entire team will sit the same day, the last day, and they will do a sprint retrospective. Now during this retrospective, they will discuss what went wrong, what they did right, and what can be improvised. So they can think, somebody can say, for example, somebody can say that this time sprint review went very long, and I really hope that product owners spend more time in filling the gaps. Like these are the basic things which product owners should have written within the user story that we will implement using ADFS, and they don't want 3 trials if login is failed, because these are small things and it eats up a lot of time during a sprint review. And whatever I am telling you are real facts. People talk like that. So this is something that I am telling that what we can improvise, and team will say, oh yes, Vidya, you make sense, because this is something what product owner could have written, and we shouldn't have think about it, and it could have saved us some time. So when we talk like that, you are thinking of improvisation, and all those notes are shared with the whole team and with the product owner. And in Agile Scrum, you are not supposed to feel bad because it's the whole team setting. One more thing I will bring to your attention is that in Agile Scrum, the ideal team size is 7 to 9 team members. There is no manager thing. There is no team lead, tech lead, architect. Everybody's team. Your role in your company could be architect or whatever, but you are still a team member. There is no authority on anyone. If I'm a manager, I cannot be so bossy, or I cannot do micromanagement on you, because Agile is for very, very mature people. If you are not ready for it, you cannot enjoy it. And in this, there is no such thing that you will drop an email and you are just waiting forever, like normally we do in industry. I have done that. Everybody does that, right? Your on-site coordinator is sitting in United States somewhere in East Coast, and you are in Indian Standard Time, or let's say I am in Pacific Time. Eastern Time is 3 hours ahead of me. So let's say when I leave from work, I sent an email, let's say at 5 o'clock my time. And at that time it's 8 o'clock in the night in New York. I sent an email. And next morning I say that next morning I can come to work. I come to work at, let's say, 9 o'clock in the morning. At that time in New York it's 12 o'clock. And I have not received an answer for my email. Now, what I'm going to say in my stand-up, do you know that? In my stand-up, this is how I'm going to present my daily stand-up at 9:30. I will say, yesterday I sent an email to my coordinator, and I sent an email after work around 5 o'clock, and I'm sure he must have received it, but I didn't get any reply. And soon after this stand-up is over, I'm going to have a call with him, or I will check what's going on, and I will get it resolved, and I will be right over to it. It doesn't mean that I'm waiting on something. If he didn't respond, you go and collaborate. It's communication. Communication comes late. Collaboration comes first. So you collaborate, rather communicate. Collaborate means go and get it. You reach out to that person that, hey, you know what? This is what I need. I need your help on that. I need to be unblocked. If that person, let's say I did right, that is what Agile says, that you collaborate, not communicate. By not communicate, I do not mean to misguide you that you don't send any email, you don't do anything. No, that's not what I meant. By communicate means that do not just fire and forget. That I sent an email now, it's his responsibility to reply. If he doesn't reply or she doesn't reply, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. You cannot do that. Now, let's say you called and that person said, oh, you know what? I'm so busy. I don't think I can get you back before 3 days. Now, again, there is nothing to feel bad. The moment you are over talking to that person, drop an email to the entire team that, okay, I spoke to the person. For some reason, this person is very busy, has high priority tasks, which will take him at least 3 days before he replies to me. And do we have any other plan B? Or is there anyone else who can answer my questions? If not, then you escalate it. And in next stand-up, you give the same status. You said, yesterday, I spoke to the person. He understands my concern, but for some reason, he has high priority tasks where he's totally, involved into, and he has no time to answer my questions. So as of now, I am blocked. When you say block, Scrum Master is responsible to remove this impediment. He will escalate it. All these things are happening even in waterfall, right? He will escalate it to product owner, or they will give you another user story, or they will cut short the requirement that without that person's help, you can move ahead, you can move on, or they will find someone who can help you, or they will escalate it to his manager that no, this person needs to give some time to you to get your questions answered. The thing is that you move fast. You report fast. You would figure out fast that where you are blocked, what can be done to unblock you. That is how you give your daily stand-up update. Now, let's say, so this is, how we improvise during retrospective. And once your retrospective is done, again, there's a new day, new sprint. Again, sprint planning happens the same day. And just for your information, sprint planning happens in one day. It cannot be an ongoing affair. You finish it in one day, you sit for 2-3 hours with the whole team. You do all the planning, and during analysis and design, sometimes you may discover more requirements, but you do it in first few days. Like I highly recommend first 2 days. If in first 2 days you can discover all the new requirements or gaps, then you are golden. Otherwise, you can be in big trouble, because you need to develop, you need to write unit tests, you need to get it code reviewed, and you need to work on some technical challenges. And sometimes test team needs time to test it. They cannot just have it on the 10th day or the last day and say, okay, it's done, you can deliver it. So tests need to sign off. So if you see, the entire software development life cycle is coming within 10 days. That's why it is iterative. Iterative means you iterate, you repeat it, and then it's incremental. So it's incremental and iterative. So I want to show you that screen one more time, because that's the beauty of entire thing. If you understand this whole process, I guarantee you understand Agile Scrum to the core. So a quick recap. Whatever you call a functional requirement specification or whatever is product backlog. It's so easy to remember. There are very few things. Product backlog. Everything dumps to product backlog. It's a big bucket of requirements, features, and a big features, requirements and all that. Now, many times in product backlog, feature could be very large. If it is very large feature, then you bring multiple user stories out of it. From product backlog, you drive work items into the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is what team works on. So if you see that team here, this team here, this team is working on tasks or user stories within the sprint backlog. Then they go into a sprint, which is 1 to 4 weeks. The standard time is 2 weeks. The Scrum Master watches over it. Product backlog is being refined during the sprint planning and within the sprint. Refined means you are working on churning the tasks and value out of it. And then every day you do daily Scrum. Once daily Scrum is done, you do the review, which means potentially shippable product increment. So you are iterating and you are incrementing. Now one more thing. This is the cool thing about Agile Scrum. No changes in duration or goal. So once you define, you commit, nobody can tell you now that go and change this requirement. Remember this thing? Now nobody can come and add more features here. If they add more, if you can really do it, do it. Otherwise you have all the rights to say, no, I cannot do it. It's going to take more time. Let's do it in the next sprint. So what they will do, they will add more features or items here, and then the same story continues to you in the next sprint. So you still get the value you delivered for this sprint. So the idea is, unlike other settings, unlike other team settings, like where your business users keep screaming at you that you didn't do this, we changed the requirement and it's hard to track and all. It's not that going to happen here. Now let's move on real quick and let me give you the review what we did. So here what we discussed is that life cycle of a developer. What are the barriers to the value delivery? We talked about Agile adoption, plan driven versus value driven, Agile manifesto, Scrum end-to-end process, Agile estimation, daily stand-ups, and what are the tools? The tool I demonstrated is TFS Online. So this is what I have to cover in this. Now, if there is anybody who wants to ask any question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask me.
Yeah, can you, hi Vidya, this is Prakash. Can you please go to this life of a developer slide? I joined a little late, so.
Sure. So in life of a developer life cycle, I was talking about that what happens usually. So this is what user needed. This is what user described and analyst understood. This is what the result of the design. This is what could have been sufficient. And this is what the result of the implementation is. And at the end, you have a happy customer, manager, and management. But are they really happy? So that is what the life cycle of the developer was. Did you get it, Prakash?
Yeah, so basically if we don't document each and everything, so this is the possible outcome, right? That's what is the intent of this.
No. The intent is, when you say document means Waterfall has the biggest document. Their requirement specification documents are going from 10 pages to 500 pages. And if you have been, into that team setting, then you might realize what I'm talking. The thing is here that you involve user so closely that you deliver what they want. And by documentation, I think you meant by catching their requirements and delivering work in small sprints. Like within 10 days, you deliver it and you show them that this is what we are doing.
Yeah,
Because
so early
so
feedback,
tightly bound to their requirement and their mindset.
early feedbacks and early demo. That's what. Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
So you deliver early, you fail fast. So because it's not like you are going to deliver it wrong. That's not what I meant. It's both ways actually. It's a two-side. Let's say I'm the user, okay? And I think, oh my God, why did I choose ADFS? My CEO is changing the need, or my technical VP is changing the path, and now they want LDAP. Or they say that no, we are not going to buy Exchange Server. We are a small company, like a startup do many times. And we are good with the SQL Server authentication. Like, why don't we create our in-house proprietary SQL Server database where user stores, like how many websites has, right? They are not ADFS. Now, but in first sprint, they said do ADFS. You started writing code, even though there was no ADFS. You were told that why don't you write those connection strings and Exchange Server, IP addresses and all those passwords and all. And we will provide you details later on after getting it from the Exchange administrator. And you are not bothered about those things because these are operational things, right? And that comes here. If you see, this was what I was talking. So you are a developer at the second level, operation is at the last. And when you reach to operation says, oh my God, what are you talking about? There is no Exchange Server, right?
Yeah. Yeah, one more related question. So this writing user story is a responsibility of the client, or is a mix of a client and the person who is going to deliver it?
So the user story creation at the high level is the task of product owner. So product owner is the one like business analyst. Basically in Agile, product owner is as good as your business analyst who understands the domain.
Yeah, so from the client side, or like the person who is giving the job, or the person who is doing the job? Typically.
It is both. It is both sometimes. Okay. I have worked in both the settings.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. So sometimes like let's say you go like I'm not sure about your experience in industry, but let's say when I started working with Microsoft, I was the only one who was going to kick off the project. So I go and start. I don't understand the domain completely, but I hear from them and I write the requirements. So it's me. I'm not from the user, right? And then I get it reviewed by the user, and then I tell to my team that, okay, this is what I understood. So it's the collaboration between the business analyst and the end users.
Okay. Thanks.
And one more thing for everybody, if there is anything, I'm trying to answer all the questions. If there is anything which needs a follow-up, feel free to drop me an email or write your comments onto the same C# Corner event, or write an email directly to me, and we can discuss it further. Okay? So do not hesitate if there is anything later comes in your mind.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. Somebody is speaking.
Yeah. Actually, I have a question to you.
Who is this? Piyush.
I'm Piyush. Yeah.
Piyush, you need to speak a little louder.
Okay, actually, I have a question that whenever there is a team meeting, how the team can decide that how much time can they took for the particular task.
So there is basically all these things. It's a normal process. When you say that how much time, so first of all, you have limited time. You have only 80 hours. And when I say 80 hours, I'm talking about American way of doing things. I have been into India. I am an Indian, and I have worked in team settings where I am still billing 80 hours in the timesheet, but I'm working 100 hours in 2 weeks. So if you say I will do it in 100 hours like that, then you have just 100 hours. And then you divide those 100 hours to all the tasks like analysis and all that stuff. And that's why we have Scrum Master. So if you see that board I was showing here, for example, it happens with me also sometimes. Let's say I'm working on some task and I have only analysis and design, and in my user story, my effort is 80 hours. Okay? But I have only 2 hours worth task here. Then Scrum Master will ask you in the stand-up meeting one day that, okay, Vidya, why do you have only analysis and design, but you estimated 80 hours? So his estimation is wrong, or you have not created new tasks. So you will create more tasks as you go on.
Sorry to interrupt. So I think what he meant was like, how come team can say like this task will take this much time, and who will justify the hours for against any task?
Now basically it depends. For example, you say that I will take 60 hours to do it. Then entire team will decide whether it will take 60 hours or not. Now, in some team settings, people go with the hours. In some team settings, they go with the story points. Now, if you decide a story point, then you don't care how many hours it will take. But I understand what you are saying. If you decide hours, then entire team will decide. And sometimes you say 60 hours, somebody say no, 40 hours. Then you will say, you are right, it can take 40 hours. But the issue is that it was long time ago when I implemented ADFS. And I think I'm going to face a little bit learning curve. And that's why I put my hours a little bit on the higher side. And if your team is really understandable and they value what you are saying and they value your technical judgment, then they will say, okay, 60 is still on the larger side. I think with your caliber, you should do it in 50 hours. And that's how we discuss. But this discussion has to be fast. It cannot linger on. So when you go in sprint planning, you come out of it with all the defined things and done. No more further meetings.
So do we also review this hours with a client, like whether they agree with the hours and task kind of mapping?
No, client has nothing to do with that. They only see the outcome after 10 days.
But client may say like, you guys could have done this, in just half hours what you just quoted. So what is the typical response in that?
If that's the case, then there is something wrong in your technical planning. Because how do you justify it, right? You are implementing the whole functionality. How do you do that in less number of hours?
So it's a matter of trust, right? Between
exactly. That's what it is, yeah. And in Agile Scrum, client doesn't look at your hours. They look at the outcome. Yes, client has a point if you take only 2 user stories. You say, okay, in 10 days we will do only 2 user stories, and one is adding login and second is adding validation or something like you can see on that board here. Add UI element validation code to model classes. So in MVC, if you have a model class, you just need to add data annotations and some regular expressions, right?
Yep.
If you do these 2 items, I'm sorry if somebody doesn't have background in MVC, what I said. So this is plain simple code. It could be JavaScript, jQuery, client side, server side, and UI deliver only these 2 items in 10 days with a team of 5 people, then it's an issue.
Yeah.
And that's why here it's collaboration over communication. So you collaborate well with them.
Yeah, actually I have a question that sometimes in Indian industry the timing, the requirement is being rapidly changes, means like within a week the requirement has been changed. So on that time what we do exactly?
Yeah, it's not right. If you are doing Agile Scrum and your requirement is changing in a week, then either you are not planning properly or you do not have the right Scrum Master. First of all, after sprint planning, your product owner doesn't stand anywhere. Product owner can only answer your questions, but they cannot change the requirement. If they change the requirement, that user story cannot be delivered within that week or within that sprint if you are doing 2-week sprint, because you lost those 5-7 days and according to them you were in the wrong direction or they gave you wrong requirements. I have worked in such scenarios very rarely, but when I worked in those scenarios, we closed the user story. Developer is given the value for that, whatever he delivered, and then a new user story has been created. So you close it, and then you create new user story, or you continue working on the same user story in the next sprint, but nobody can blame you. The idea of Agile Scrum is not to blame one single person. It's the team, and team works together. And that's the beauty of Agile Scrum. But the irony is that many companies, many teams, and many Scrum masters and people, they don't know if they are doing it right. So it needs a little bit more education and mindset that how do we do it. So what you do is you play very well in the sprint planning.
Yep.
The team members having their specialties, anybody is working, doing the good in designing, somebody's which is having so much was working in MVC, and somebody is working in WCF. So how can they decide? How can the Scrum Master decide, or the team decide that which part of work they can do better, or how can they take the work?
Usually what happens is, I have been into such situation many times. So what happens, let's say, for example, your forte is middle tier. Okay. You always work on the middle tier, but there is MVC view needs to be designed and you want to learn MVC. Now, this is a little bit challenging thing. So you can, during sprint planning or when it comes to the assignment after sprint planning, you can say that, okay, I have not worked on MVC for long. Let me take this user story. Sometimes your team will say, or the Scrum Master will say, no, it's a high priority task, and you seem to have less experience, or you will tell yourself that you have not worked for long because you need to talk in the favor of the team. So you will say, okay, I have not worked for long, but I wish to work on MVC again, and can I take that user story? But when you say that, you also have to make sure that you say that I will put extra hours or whatever it takes to deliver it within 10 days. Or within the sprint, and you commit to that. But sometimes if it is so high priority, someone can contradict and say, no, let's not do it this time. In next sprint, you can take some MVC view task. Okay?
If the person left the organization or left the team, so on that time, what we can do? Because the time is limited. So
no, this is nothing. This is an impediment. So if there are any such impediments like somebody left or absconded or falls sick, right? Like you have a family situation where you fall sick, you met with an accident, anything can happen with anybody. Nothing happens. Like work can bounce back. Life doesn't stop. And whatever I'm saying, for last words I said, this is American mentality, not where I belong to. So work will bounce back. Means it happens. That's fine. So they report it to the stakeholders that one person is coming short to the team. He has some family emergencies or whatever. And just to answer your question from the project manager perspective, before team commits to the sprint, there is a capacity planning. That is right here. So in capacity planning, we decide that how many days you are available. So let's say there is a 10-day sprint. So I am starting on 4th, but I am available only until 7th. Right? So I am available only for 4 days. Means I can work only 32 hours. But the sprint goes for 80 hours. So my Scrum Master will see that what I can deliver in 32 hours, which other person can take. Or they will give me some small task, some small user story, which I can deliver and go. You got it?
Yeah.
So that is first thing. And second, if there is any family emergency or anything, then you are fine. They will either deliver it in the next sprint, or someone else can take it, then that person will take it.
One final question from my side, Vidya. So this UI I have never seen actually. So
This is
do we
TFS
get
Online.
the
This is
similar
TFS
UI
Online.
wherever currently you are displaying in TFS, or is there is some special view of this kind of UI I've never seen in TFS?
So I don't have local TFS installed, but when you go to your local TFS, there is a web portal link.
Okay.
So when you click on that, then you will see the everything in the IE or in your browser window.
So this UI doesn't come in this desktop version of this TFS?
It comes, but from there you need to go to the. It takes you to online. It's basically on the cloud. So it doesn't come in the local version. It comes only in the online.
Yeah, because it looks like some new kind of UI
No, it's not new. You
designed
just
for
go
this.
from your local TFS, you click on the web, and it shows you everything in the web.
Okay, I'll try it out. Thank you.
No problem.
Can we put also Jira here in ASP.NET project means Visual Studio?
I heard something Jira. Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Jira is basically another tool from Microsoft, and that tool is used for the issues or bug reporting. Jira is not designed mainly for this type of thing. It's mainly for the bug reporting. So Microsoft also uses that internally with their prime vendors and partners to report issues and bugs.
Yeah, mostly this is used for this production support kind of projects, right?
Right.
If I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Any other questions? If there are no more questions, then I think it's time to end. And if you come up with more questions later on, please feel free to reach out to me. And
Can you share your contact detail, Vidya?
sorry, which detail?
Contact details, any public level details you would like to share?
I'm sorry, I did not understand your question.
Means, suppose we want to get some questions, technical questions, or your suggestions or anything. So,
Yeah, my email ID is vidya_mct. It's VIDYA_M as in Mary, C as in Charlie, T as in Tom, MCT @yahoo.com. Or you can connect me with my blog, with my Facebook page. So thank you very much, and keep learning, and I appreciate your time you took today to discuss and learn about doing .NET with Agile Scrum. And thank you very much, guys, once again. I appreciate it.
thanks a lot, Vidya.